Never assume that you know the whole story. For example, I had a big top at work, and oftentimes they had a cake. And oftentimes, when tables have leftover cake, I'm sure if you work in a restaurant, this has happened to you at some point. They will give you the leftovers, the leftover cake. And this lady hands me a, like she they had cookie cake, and it was like piled like 4 pieces high on like a little appetizer plate. And she's like, "Here you go, baby. You're so skinny. You go eat now." Little does she know that I worked very hard to be skinny, and she just handed me one of my worst enemies. You know, and she doesn't even know it. In her mind, she was doing a great thing, and she is. You know, because like even though I'm not gonna eat the cookie cake, I have plenty of coworkers in the back that will fuck that shit up. You know, like it was gone in 15 minutes. But anyway, she had no idea, and it was a busy Friday, so I didn't have time to explain. But she had no idea that I used to be 280 pounds, like 50% body fat, literally obese. You know, I like another example is I was at the ice rink yesterday, and I had my tripod out. I was recording some stuff, and this girl I've never seen before, um, figure skater, she skates up to me. She's like, "Hey, do y'all have an Instagram that y'all post these videos on?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then I asked her, I was like, "Do you have an Instagram?" And I was, cause like she was pretty good. I was like, "You're doing like crazy ass spins and shit." And she's like, "Yeah, so like I used to skate in Russia," and I'm like, "What?" You know? Cause like that's not something you hear every day. You know, just like when I tell people that I've lost 130 pounds, that's not something people hear every day. So I kind of had like the same reaction. I was like, Russia? What? You know? And she's like, yeah, I grew up skating there, but she was telling me about how like bad it was, you know? Like the environment. It's not very like she was like, if you didn't keep your arms like this, your coach would have a stick and they'd smack you with it. And as somebody who's been skating for 10 years and I'm self-taught and I go to the rink and prioritize fun, that was mind-blowing to me. You know, to to have a sport that is that to me is like one of the funnest things on earth. To her, it well, not anymore because she was there at the Galleria. But to her, at that point in time, you know, it was a chore. It sucked. It was punishment. You know, like I would never think of skating as punishment. But I guess if you put me in Russia and smack me with a stick every time I didn't have my arms up, I probably wouldn't like skating either. You know, and I was kind of talking like, dang, that's crazy, cause like I've never done this, but I'm not a figure skater. You know, I just kind of I don't think about my arms when I skate. I just kind of let them do what they do. I mean, I guess when I'm going fast, I will. My arms do come up, but if I go out here, um, the reason I don't do that is because I'll hit somebody. You know, I got too much wingspan to hit the small gap, so you gotta tuck a little bit, but I still kind of use my elbows to balance. But I don't even think about it. You know, it's not something that has ever crossed my mind. But in her perspective, she she gotta stay like this, or else she gonna get smacked with a stick. Yeah. So you never know the whole story of where somebody came from, what they did. You know, it takes getting to know people is a process and a skill. it's difficult, you know? Like I was saying in one of my previous videos, being social skills, it really is a skill, and you only get better by practicing. You only, like, what's weird is that as a kid, I used to be so shy, you know? You guys see me on my live streams and in these videos. Like last night's live stream, it took me an hour and 20 minutes to finish my bowl of chicken because I got caught up talking the whole time. And what's funny about that is when I was a kid, I was extremely shy. Me and my family, we'd all be at the breakfast table in the morning, and my parents would ask me, you know, before we went to school, Dillon, what do you want for breakfast? And I'd just sit there. And then my sister would chime in, and she'd be like, he wants Frosted Flakes. And my parents would be like, okay, but we asked Dillon, what do you want for breakfast? And I just looked at them like, didn't she just fucking tell you that I wanted Frosted Flakes? But like, I wouldn't say it. I'd still just be like, and then they'd make me Frosted Flakes, and I'd crush the whole bowl, and they're like, we don't understand it, you know? I didn't understand it either. I'm like, how does my sister know I want Frosted Flakes? This is crazy. But, you know, I'm not complaining. It's making life easy on me. I don't gotta say shit. You know, my parents would introduce me to people. They'd be like, hi, this is our son Dillon. Dillon, say hi. That was me. You know, I wouldn't say a word. They'd just be like, yeah, he's shy. And then they just kind of have to move on. Because I didn't give him any other option, you know. It wasn't until maybe, I don't know, it wasn't like I lost 130 pounds and just started being a yapper, you know. Like it was a process. Like all throughout school, you know, you're kind of forced to talk to people, so you get a little better. But maybe you acquire a small group of friends and you kind of just are with them for the whole 12 years. Maybe y'all go through all the grades together, which was kind of most of my years. So even though I got a little social enough to make a small group of friends, I was barely scratching the surface of social skills. And then I turned 16 and I got my first job. You know, I started as a busser though, so not a lot of talking was involved. However, I was put in a new environment and I started working with new people. And over time, I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little better at this talking shit. And then, when I turned 18. They promoted me and they put me in to go. You know, I learned how to take orders over the phone, which scared the shit out of me at first. You know, I used to avoid answering the phone. And then somebody told me, like, somebody's having a good Sunday. Well, one of my coworkers told me, like, Dillon, there's no way to beat around this bush, man. Like, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna make mistakes. If you need help, just tell them you're new and you're gonna get somebody else and put them on hold. So that's exactly what I do, you know. They started making me pick up every single phone call, and then within 2 days, it was like clockwork. I didn't even need any help, you know. And then about a year later, I became a server, which I thought would be similar, but it's a lot different when you have access to people's facial expressions, if that makes sense, people's body language. Over the phone, you know, it's a whole different experience because all I hear is their words, you know. They don't know what I look like, they don't know my body language. The stakes are actually a lot lower versus when I became a server. I was like, okay, there's more variables that matter. And after I completed my weight loss journey, I was like, really, dude? Really? But anyway, after I completed my weight loss journey, I was like, sometimes, it doesn't really, sometimes it doesn't even matter what you say. Like, like when I went in for my open call at Neil Hamill, and I, I told them, I was like, I didn't even know y'all existed a month ago. When I told my sister that, she was like, why would you say that? And I was like, I don't know. Because it was true. It's authentic. I think that's something that people like about me. Oh my god, the wind is freaking blowing my tripod around. But long story short, some things that will help you with social skills is honestly be yourself. And if people don't like who you are, then that's not your problem. It's theirs. But I gotta go hit arms. I'll talk to y'all later, okay?